The Autistically ED-free membership is now officially the Existential Autistic membership. So, why the heck did I make this change? Well, if you're a longtime listener of the podcast, or if you've read any of my books or done any of my coaching programs, you know that I really dislike the term eating disorder. I prefer the term eating adaptation because food and body struggles are nothing more than adaptive responses to an overwhelming world. So, I initially launched the Autistically ED Free membership after season 1 of the Autistically ED Free Academy to be a space for continued connection on the eating disorder recovery journey. But what about when you don't want to be in recovery anymore? What about when you're just fucking done with the eating disorder? What about when you just want to be free? Well, that is when you are faced with the same existential questions that drove you into the escape hatch of an eating disorder in the first place. This is, of course, where quasi recovery comes in, which I don't only talk about in my book and in this membership, but season 2 of the Academy is launching very soon. So if you're an individual looking for a transformative, neurodiversity affirming approach to discovering your true self, this program is for you. Because quasi recovery is the absolute worst. Trust me, I know. When you're in quasi recovery, you're recovered to a certain extent, but you're not fully living. You're still at the mercy of constant fear, self doubt, and endless questions, including what will replace my eating disorder? Who will I be without the ED or the in recovery identity? And perhaps most profoundly, what if I can't handle being healthy? Well, here's the thing, my friend. Most autistic people don't develop eating adaptations because we're trying to look a certain way. We developed these coping mechanisms because we needed an escape from the overwhelming reality of existing as autistic beings in a neurotypical world. The eating disorder became our special interest, our routine, our entire sense of self. And it's these roots that are what our membership calls have been about from the very beginning. Through weekly deep dives, we've been connecting through the questions that keep autistic minds awake at 3 a.m. Maybe you relate to some of mine. What am I doing it all for? How do I handle feeling so trapped in this human body? Why does it feel like I'm walking around in a cardboard cutout all the damn time? In the membership, we've been doing existential work all along, and now we're just finally calling it what it is. So if you've ever felt existentially lonely in this shallow world, if you've ever been told you think too much, come join us in the Existential Autistic membership at livelabelfree.com/membership. So again, that's livelabelfree.com/membership. And of course, I will leave the link in the show notes as well. And now, let's get back to today's episode. Hello, and welcome back to the Live Label Free podcast. I'm your host, Livia Sarah, and today I am joined by my dear friend and fellow neurodivergent, energy coalescent alien, Nico. Nico, do you want to introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Yeah. So hi, I'm Nico. I am also in recovery / discovery from an eating disorder, and I have autism. I'm also non-binary. I use they them pronouns, and yeah, I met Livia probably about 6-7 months ago now, and it has been fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna let my curiosity guide me, and something that I'm always curious when I listen to podcasts is like, okay, but where did this originate? Like, how did these people even connect or meet? Because I'm autistic, I like origin stories, you know? So Nico, do you wanna share a bit, how you discovered, Yes, discovered, live label free. I loved that you used recovery slash discovery, because you have read How to Get Out of Quasi Recovery, which is out by the time this episode comes out, which is very exciting. But yeah, do you want to share how you discovered Live Label Free and the podcast and all the things?
Yeah, so I first found you on Instagram, and I was like, at the time, I was looking at like quite a lot of different recovery accounts, and yours was definitely the only one that I'd seen like it. I had seen a couple of others where it was like I'm also autistic on the side of
Mhm.
having an eating disorder, but there wasn't really anything that um covered the intersection between those two
Right.
things. Um, so yeah, it was really interesting, like to see that. And so many of the posts, I was like, oh my God, yeah, that makes so much sense. That makes so much sense. And I was just doing that over and over again. Um, yeah, and I kind of went from there. I was following you for a few years. And then you put out, I think it was like a request or a Google form, like asking for advice or something on creating an academy thing,
Yes,
and essentially, yeah, for creating the academy. And I responded to it because I think it was originally going to be for parents.
it was.
Um,
Yeah.
and then you reached out to me and was like, um, yeah, I liked that you said, basically you said that you liked that I'd said that it was important to also have a space for people who are like in recovery or discovery, um,
Yes.
because there are so few spaces for people with eating disorders or eating adaptations and autism. There was just so few spaces for them that it'd be really nice for us to have a space to connect as well. And then yeah, I joined the academy and I joined the community as well, and here we are.
Yes, I think, yeah, no, because I had one person I had you and one other person who responded to that survey that I was so grateful for, because if it weren't for you, it probably would have just been for parents, the academy. And you had said, "I have been, in recovery spaces, but I have been feeling stuck, and that's what inspired me." And then there was one other person who I remember there was a question, in wait, maybe this was you that responded, "I am the child." Was that you?
Yes, yes,
That
that was
was
me.
you. Okay, I'm looking at the wrong survey. Okay, well, then you were the only one, because 'cause I'm looking through the, like, Autistically ADA-Free Academy post survey, but I remember because this cracked me up when I was reading, and I was like, "I am the child."
Yeah.
And yeah, and that's what led me to launch the academy for individuals and caregivers, and actually by the time that I launched season 2 of the academy, which I'm working on now, I actually am going to, split the groups, which just, to try it out, but also, I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback of the academy, rightfully so, was, that individuals who are very vulnerable and fear taking up space, and
Mhm.
they found it very hard to speak on the calls because they didn't want to take away from the parents and the caregivers, which again I totally get. So I'm excited for the revamp of the academy, but yes, I'm so grateful that you joined the academy and what you wrote afterwards, your testimonial, which I will be putting into the podcast at some point when that's ready, about um, being in both communities online for years, and how you still learned so much, and even what you're saying about my Instagram and how it, like, um stood out amongst, like, that. You have no idea how validating that is for me, because I know that we talk about this in the membership calls about this idea of never feeling good enough, and, like, knowing you're doing all these things, but constantly questioning, and this ties to the existential piece. It's like, well, yeah, like, what am I all doing it for? Like, it's so hard, life is so hard, there's so much struggle and suffering, and I don't even know if anyone's listening to me, kind of thing. So to
Yeah,
hear in real time, that people are not only listening, but they're gaining immense value from it, that, what a dream, what a dream. And now we're on the podcast and we're best friends. So, it's like I call it the neurodivergent infinity circle that just, we connect, we resonate, we like do all these things together and now we're friends and friends for
Yeah,
life. Like that, yeah, that's really, really magical. So just backtracking a bit, now that people know the context of how we connected, do you can you please share with our listeners, some of your backstory? Um, what it was like, I'm assuming growing up undiagnosed neurodivergent, how that contributed to the eating disorder, the eating adaptation, and how, being non-binary and that journey of self-discovery, how all of these paths intertwine, because that is a connection that, as I said before we started recording, is so common. And really, I feel like there are a few people talking about it, but not enough. Not enough.
yeah,
So, yes, please share.
yeah. I like that you said intertwined because as you were kind of like asking me to explain my story, I was thinking like, I'm not going to be able to separate these things out. I'm just going to have to
Right.
basically do like a timeline and put them all together.
Yes, yes.
Um, but yeah, um, so I kind of start my first step. I think. Well, I was I was quite stereotypically autistic as a child, but it just
Mhm.
kind of it wasn't picked up on. Like
Right.
obviously I masked it quite well, but I
Mhm.
was stereotypically autistic. And
Mhm.
like my mom has looked back and she said, your teacher said that when you were in like year three, which
Mhm.
is I think that's age like 8 and 9, or like,
Yes.
and she was saying your teachers would say all this stuff about you, and they would think it was a bit weird, and like how did nobody pick up on it because it was
Right.
so obviously autistic.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, I grew up in quite like a rural, sort of isolated place where like being weird is kind of it's sort of okay because everyone's a
Yes.
little bit weird because basically we're like
Yes.
country bumpkins, um and just a bit bizarre, and you just let the people who are bizarre get on with it.
Yes.
um and then I went to high school, and that's where I really struggled. So high school is from age 11 to age 16.
Oh,
um
so that's
and
different
so
then that's
yeah,
very different. Yeah, because in the US, it's age 15 to 18, and then you go to college or university.
yeah, so you can cut this bit out, but just for context, you can keep it in if you want. So we have primary school, which it can have like a nursery bit. So that would be like kindergarten, and that would be like age 2 or 3 to say, I think it's age 5. But not all primary schools will have that. So my primary school didn't have that because it was tiny. And then we have actually primary school, which is from age 5 to age 11.
Mhm.
And then we go straight into high school, which is from age 11 to 16. And then we have, it's called further education. You can either go to college, which is like the end of your high school, or you can go and do like an apprenticeship or something else. And that will be from age 16 to 18,
Yep.
and that's generally when people go to uni, but things start changing a lot around that time.
I
Um,
first of all, I love that you said you can cut this part out. No, this is super helpful because and I probably will. Well, we'll see, we'll see. I'm gonna listen back to it and see because autistic people, we love context, right? Um, because it's actually the same in the Netherlands. I don't
okay,
like we don't call it high school, but you I think it's at age 11,
so we can,
yeah. Age
yeah, we
11.
also call high school secondary school.
Yes, yes,
We've
that's
got
what it is.
primary and secondary.
So at like age 11, you get a recommendation from your teacher about, oh, you can do an apprenticeship or you're gonna go to the university route.
Oh
Yeah, I'm
wow,
I'm very against it. Like they basically already
that's so
decide.
early.
Yeah, they basically already decide is this kid smart enough to go to university. So Netherlands has many of its flaws. So the whole, the education in Europe is so much better than in the US. That is so not true. The US is a fucking ginormous country that is
Hmm.
very divided.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
I went to a very, very good public school in Brookline, which is right outside of Boston. I mean, it's not for nothing that MIT and Harvard are like basically right next to each other. Um, Fun fact, that's actually the reason why we came to the US was because my mom got a job offer at Harvard, and no one in their right mind will go, "Oh, no, that's not right?
My God, that is
But
amazing.
yeah, and speaking of, like, teaching and jobs, something crazy that I learned, I was so shocked, but at the same time, like, when you, like, let it sink in, you're not shocked at all kinda thing. Um,
Mm.
my dad, he used to be when he still worked, which he hasn't for 15 years, but that's another story. Um, he was a scientific illustrator, so he created, graphic he's autistic and ADHD. For context,
Yeah.
we know where that came from. Um, he was a scientific illustrator, so he would create graphics of, like, mitosis and how cells divide and how cancer spreads and all this stuff for
Yeah.
school textbooks. That was his job. And he told me that the same textbook that's, like, printed across the country, different versions are actually printed for different states. So, for example, the textbooks that were printed in Kansas or in Texas, the entire chapter on evolution was cut out because God created the earth, right?
Yeah.
um, so yeah, we're not gonna go there, but that was so, like, to me, such a clear illustration of this is just one of those examples of how why the US, is so divided and why people do have such beliefs. Like, if you are literally being taught different material in school, how certain information is literally being withheld from you because that doesn't align with, the majority of your state's beliefs or whatever, um, you're gonna grow up with different beliefs, right?
Yeah.
So we were talking about this about school. See, this is what always happens. is we go down a little side path and then we get lost. Yeah, we were talking about school and oh yeah, in the Netherlands, you it's very similar to the UK. Let's just leave it at that. That yeah, you go to high school or the next school after like the elementary school in Holland, we say basisschool, which basically means basis school, so, like, the
Yeah.
basis of everything.
Yeah.
Then you do everyone does the 4 years, and then based on, again, which route you chose, which you already chose when you were 12, by the way, you do, like, the harder classes and high school is longer for you if you're on the university path because
Yeah.
the other people, they can start working right away because they don't need all the intellectual skills.
Yeah.
But just that's something that I don't like very much about the Netherlands, and I think it's the school system is a very good illustration of that. Is in Holland we say hokjescultuur, which means box culture, which basically, as you can assume, people in the Netherlands, and again, I'm huge stereotyping here because not everyone, but in general, Dutch people like to put people into boxes, and if you don't fit into the boxes, you're not part of the group kind of thing. It's very
Yeah.
cliquey, um, and that's one of the things as a neurodivergent person that cannot conform for the life of her, it is very hard for me to live there because I feel so judged, and I know that a lot of my Dutch clients feel exactly the same way. So, anyways, huge side tangent. We were talking about school.
Yeah.
Back to your story about growing up as the classic autism in the school system.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really when I went to high school or secondary school, so from 11 to age 11 to 16.
Mhm.
Um, I went to a high school in the city, and it's kind of like seen as like the high achiever high school, like um rated as like outstanding and stuff. And they were just horrendous when it came to anything to do with like supporting students on
Mhm.
anything that wasn't academics. Um, so yeah, that's where I really, really started to struggle. But it's weird because even though I was very much struggling on an autistic sense, um, I still had absolutely no idea that I might be autistic until I was like
Yeah.
17, and I'd been out of school for a few years sick by that time.
Right.
Um, but the strange thing that I do remember is I have this really, really vivid memory from when I was 12 years old. And again, I didn't pick up on what was going on at the time, for until I was like 17 again. And basically, I just had this absolute aversion to the idea that, oh my God, my body might be changing. Doing, it might be doing things that's going to make me look a lot more female, that's going to,
Mhm.
yeah, like designate me as feminine. And I was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I kind of kept that within myself for like a couple of years. And it was when I was 14, when we had like other stresses in my life as well, um, that my eating disorder really came about. And I didn't, it's strange, like this must have all been going on in the back of my mind because I wasn't thinking about it consciously as I was essentially developing my eating disorder and I was going through the motions of
Mhm.
um like purposefully losing weight and stuff. But at the same time, I could kind of feel this weight coming off. This is going to sound really funny because no, my sister made a funny comment about this a few weeks ago. I could feel this like weight coming off of me because I was like, oh my God, I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Mhm.
Because that can't happen. My body's not getting enough energy to even like
Right.
sustain itself. There's no way it can grow. There's no way it can do all these other things.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so that happened, and I didn't think a single thing about it until I was like 17, and I kind of properly had started learning about like LGBTQ spaces,
Mhm.
which is also a similar time to when I started learning about like autism and how I could be autistic.
Because
Um,
the connection, yes.
yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so that's kind of how things happened for me. Just to jump back a little bit, I was like first taken into any sort of treatment when I was 15,
Mhm.
and then kind of taken mostly out of school until I was like 18, sort
Mhm.
of like in and out. It was weird.
Yep.
And then I was
I
diagnosed.
resonate, yeah, and I
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And then I was diagnosed as autistic when I was 18. Um, was sort of figuring out that I was non-binary or I was something that wasn't what I was designated as by
Yep.
society, around a little bit before that time as well, and then kind of really started to come into it and bring it into my life, not with my family to start with.
Mhm.
I was part of a few online communities,
Mhm.
um, and then yeah, I changed my name when I was 21, legally when I was 22. Shout out to Celine, who was my line manager and also my witness for changing my name. I absolutely love her for that.
It's so funny.
Um,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's so funny that you
Here we are.
it's so funny that you mention this because I, like, obviously only know you as Nico, so I can't even, like, imagine that you were anything else, you know what I mean? That's so
We
interesting.
literally didn't even think about that at
Yeah,
all.
because you're
But
like,
yeah.
"I legally changed my name," and it almost, like how I'm interpreting is like, I changed who I am as a person, but it's like, that's the irony of it is you were always this person, but on the
Mhm.
outside, no one knew,
Right.
like and I think that's what I said on a recent podcast that I cannot have any conversation anymore without bringing existentialism into it, and here we go again, because I
You
think
literally
that
said it last night.
oh, I did yes, I did, on the membership call. Yes, exactly, about how oh, about, like, not yeah, like, you don't even know yourself, like, cognitively what's going on, and that's why I
Mhm,
love that you just shared this, like, vivid memory of when you were 12, about, like, I don't want to develop into, all these female characteristics, and like, although I'm not non-binary, I identify with the pronouns she, her, um, I'm sure that, you've heard me speak on the podcast, and actually the podcast that I recorded a few weeks ago that's coming up before yours is called Girl Not Woman, and it's about
mhm,
this idea of how growing up, I identified as a girl, like, people can say, "Oh, look at that little girl," like, totally fine, but as soon as people started calling me miss or ma'am or lady, like, even saying the words woman and lady, like, to describe me, I'm like, no," like, just no. And for me, because it was unconscious, like growing up, I didn't want boobs and a butt and a period and all this stuff that, so my sisters and their friends were like giggling and they were like excited about it. Like they were
Yeah.
excited to become women. I was like how can you want that? Like that's just all so burdensome. And yeah, so again, so many of my neurodivergent clients, say like, I have a fear of growing up and being healthy, not just because of those responsibilities, but also just because of the physical attributes that feel like they're wrong, like they don't align. Um,
Mhm.
so anyways, I know I interrupted you, but I just wanted to add that in there.
No, yeah, it makes so much sense. Yeah, I think I thought that that was where I was for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, and then like it's kind of become a lot more obvious to me that girl was safe because girl and child were basically the same.
Yes.
And and it wasn't even like the child that was needed to me. It was the neutral.
Neutral, which I love because live label free. Everything I say is remove the judgment and make it neutral. And oh gosh, I've like never even said this like publicly, but like I have thought about it a lot. Like about, am I non-binary? Like, is that something that I would want to identify as? And just on a, like a soul level, like no, like I'm trying. I don't even know how to explain this, but like the because I do identify as like this sound again, it's words are totally failing me right now because like I do want to be perceived by society as a female, as a girl, but like not in a feminine way, if that makes
Yeah,
sense. Like
yeah,
if it's like a spectrum, like the gender spectrum, like I'm
yeah,
not like in the middle neutral. Like I'm definitely even though as I'm saying that, like I think we're like doing live processing of Livia's what's going on in her brain right now because I don't when I meet anyone though, like obviously I will notice like they're a male or they're a female or they're I mean a girl, woman, man, neutral, non-binary,
yeah,
obviously you notice that. However, and I think this also ties to the age thing, like when I meet a young person or an old, like I notice the age, but it has no effect whatsoever as to how I engage with that person because
yeah.
ultimately I see every being as a being. Um, and anyways, I
You
yeah,
Yeah, it's like you can see what they look like externally, but that doesn't really mean anything. You have
yes,
no idea what their soul is like, and
right.
that's who they are rather than what you can see outside.
Right, exactly, and again, I almost feel ashamed saying this, just like we were talking about the money yesterday, and I felt ashamed saying it, but I realized, like, all the stuff I'm ashamed about is stuff that other people tend to also be ashamed about, so that's why I'm gonna talk about it. But
Yeah,
growing up, I was so judgmental, like, to the point when I look back, I'm like, I cannot believe that was me, like, I would make fun of people, I would bully people, and I know now that it was all projection because I was bullied, so I would bully right back. I wasn't the quiet kid who would hide under the bed. I would do mean things back. It was
yeah,
and I think that part of that was like almost my demand avoidance and like the autonomy of like, you can't bully me. Like you're gonna see what that's gonna end up in. It didn't work very well. Because
yeah,
I needed an eating disorder to escape ultimately, and that was bullying myself. But I think, because now I am the most non-judgmental person. Like I trust. everyone unless they give me a reason not to trust them. When I meet someone for the
Yeah,
first time, I am like, this relationship could be anything. You can be anyone like that you show me you are kind of thing. And that is my true core, that is my being. I think that's, tied to the sensitivity and all that. It's like I'm so sensitive to people's souls almost that
yeah,
I literally am incapable of judging because I'm like, yeah, but the judgment is cognitive and this connection isn't cognitive. It's like on another level. Um, but I think as a
yeah,
kid, feeling so broken, feeling so wrong, not knowing why, I think that's where the judgment came from. Because it was like, if I make you wrong too, then I don't have to be alone in my wrongness almost.
yeah, yeah. And it's everyone around you was trying to fit other people into boxes. So
Yep,
of course you were also trying to do the same, but
yep.
maybe sometimes like your boxes didn't line up with what everyone else's boxes were.
Right. Right. And I think that's where, and I'm sure we can dive into this and how it relates to your story. But like I think that's where the compassion and the forgiveness of like the past comes in and is so important because for so long, and this is something I talk about with so many people, it's like this anger and frustration around, why have I been doing this eating disorder for so long? Like, I know it's destructive to me, like, I know it's hurting my relationships, and yet I keep doing it. And I tell, like, as long as you keep judging it as like bad and that the fact that you did it and you're doing it is bad, like, that's gonna keep being in alignment with your identity, and I think that the forgiveness isn't necessarily about saying, "Oh, it's fine that I had an eating disorder." The forgiveness is so that you can let it go and move on. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm curious for you if that word compassion and forgiveness, if you feel any soul, instinctual thoughts or connections coming up around your own personal journey.
Um, yeah, I think I'm just gonna think for 1 second.
That's totally fine. I love the cat's tail wagging, like,
Yeah,
slightly.
she's just decided she's sitting here now. Oh, and no, she's probably gonna go and eat and make noise or something. Um, yeah, so I think so I'm gonna kind of start on a little bit of a tangent, just to be
Yes.
like on theme for us.
Yes,
Um,
exactly, exactly.
so I think related to what you were saying about how you used to be really judgmental and now you're not like that. I think that's something that probably a lot of people with eating disorders, maybe not in their like entire life, but
Mhm.
in the eating disorder part of their life can relate to because I think a really it's something that's coming around a lot more now is saying you can have an eating disorder without being fat phobic and really
Mm,
separating those two things and saying, okay, you can be struggling, but that doesn't mean that you have to be putting other people down. And I think
yes.
at the beginning of a lot of people's eating disorders, especially if it's a restrictive eating disorder, you
Mhm.
will be fat phobic
Yep,
because we are in a society that is fat phobic. We
yep,
are taught to think like that, and our eating disorders feed off of it.
yep,
So
right.
like where they feed off it in relation to ourselves and then we push that onto other people as well whether we say these things out loud or they're just thoughts that we have. It's something that we will generally in the society that we are in, something that eating people with eating disorders will go through. And you have to kind of in the society that we are in, unless you were raised very differently, which kudos to your parents if you were, um then it's something that you do have to unlearn. Like, hey,
Yeah,
I really struggle with, for example, I really struggle with the idea of being a healthy weight or of being overweight. But
mhm.
that doesn't mean that people who are a healthy weight or who are overweight are bad people for being like that.
Yes,
Like,
yes, that is a
it's still
very
fine for them to be like that. I think, yeah, so I think that's kind of where part of the compassion comes in is recognizing that yes, you have this struggle, but it doesn't have to define everything else that you are, and you can still be a good person despite of that. and I'm not saying like, oh, you don't need to recover, or like
Right, right,
um you don't need to be healthy. Like that's the end game, that's the end goal. But while you're in that process, you don't still have to be somebody who does feed into other
right.
people's pain, kind of thing. So
I'm
kind of
so
been a little
yeah,
bit,
I mean, I'm so glad you brought up that distinction because I think that is I don't know if you were part of this or following this at all last year when I posted something on Instagram, and basically the entire fat activism community made me out to be the fat phobic eating disorder recovery coach. Um, it was about how you know that I'm sure you know that phrase, I feel fat.
yeah,
And I wanted to bring some nuance to that conversation because that's how my brain is. I so
yeah,
often, like many people during my eating disorder, I said I feel fat. And it was so invalidating to me when the professionals would immediately go, "Fat's not a feeling. You feel uncomfortable. You feel this. You feel that XYZ." Because I got this sense of how do you know how I feel? You can't tell me how I feel.
mhm,
And obviously I didn't actually feel fat, but that was, the words failing me because even when I try and think back now to what was I feeling, there are no words. Like and people say, "No, well, it was uncomfortable. It was this." No, it wasn't. There's genuinely I don't know how to describe it. And obviously I know that it's not I feel fat and I never felt fat because okay, fat isn't a feeling, but it was a post. I did not title it good at all, so I'm not even gonna say the title, but it was just about how it's very invalidating to when someone says that to immediately go, "Fat's not a feeling, you feel all these other things." Um,
yeah,
and basically because I said it almost again, and this was mistake on my part, almost, like, so bluntly of, like, you need to listen to people when they say fat is a feeling, like, be curious as to what they're feeling. Um, all like, so many, like, fat Instagram accounts, yeah, like, that's literally what they wanna be called. So, fat people on Instagram made me out to be someone who's fat phobic and all that, but I'm like, that's actually the opposite of what I'm trying to do right now because I don't believe that fat is a bad word. So if we say I feel fat and it's not a bad word, then it doesn't have to mean anyways, I don't want to go too deep into this, but I do remember someone commented on that post about, well, if you have anorexia or if you have restrictive eating disorder, you automatically are fat phobic. And I think that is what we're talking about here is that is
mhm,
so not true. Because even for me and like the fear of weight gain, which again is so often, oh, that means they're fat phobic. They don't want to be fat. No, because it also has to do with the sensory sensitivities. And in the case of, being on the very infinite gender spectrum, not wanting to identify with features that that society would identify you with that gender. Um, I had one client who is non-binary, and they told me that they have this like range, and they told me that if I go over that range, I will feel unbearably dysphoric. And
mhm,
I think that it is inhumane and wrong and rude and mean to force someone to go above that range if they literally feel like they cannot exist in that body in what I'm trying to get at? Anyways,
yeah.
yeah.
I think
Sorry if
like the nuance is like that range has to some of that range has to lie within a healthy space. Like
yes.
they can't be ill, and
Right. Right, right, right,
if all of that range does lie outside of what is healthy for them, then you need to do something else for them to help them to
right.
become healthy. But yeah,
Exactly,
I
yes.
get what you mean.
Yeah, no, and yeah, because obviously, like, you don't wanna be in, like, the only range I can be in is severely underweight, obviously, it's
Yeah,
like, well, we're gonna have to talk about that, my friend, but, you know, I think with regards to and this is why the whole, trusting your body and intuitive eating and your body will settle at whatever weight is right for it, I think in most cases, that is appropriate, and in many cases, even for non-binary people, that I think is completely appropriate. Um, However, if you if like your greatest fear is feeling dysphoric in your body if you go over that range, like of course you're gonna, kind of be, especially if you're autistic, be hyper focused on staying within that
Yeah,
range. And if that's what allows you to exist in this world, then stop trying to take that person's protective mechanism away. Um yeah, again, there's so much nuance because it doesn't want, you don't want it to hinder your life. But this is why, the person-centered, like, individualized approach, especially when we're dealing with neurodivergence and all the things that come with that, is so important because you can't say, "Oh, go all in and just trust your body where it lands," if you feel in your soul, "No, but I can't trust it because this
yeah,
body has betrayed me, is betraying me, like, from the day I was born." And I'm very consciously using this sentence because 'cause I'd love to bridge now into that phrase. So just for context, again, Nico and I have a lot of very meaningful conversations, and I was telling Nico about my existential claustrophobia, and which at this point I've done so many podcast episodes on, so we're not even gonna explain what that is anymore. Um, and feeling trapped and constrained by the physical limitations of this human body. And we were going back and forth, and you told me that gender dysphoria doesn't necessarily feel like being trapped in your body, but feeling betrayed by your body. That is such a powerful sentiment. So I would love if you can elaborate on that experience and what it feels like to feel betrayed by your body.
yeah. So, um, I was actually thinking about it a little bit more today, and like this might be completely different for other people, other trans people. Like I'm not saying this is a universal experience, but it really felt like when you described what you were describing as the existential claustrophobia
Mhm.
as being trapped in your body, I was thinking that makes so much more sense than saying that dysphoria is like being trapped in your body because it doesn't, for me at least, dysphoria didn't feel like I was like trapped in a body that was too small or it was keeping me in or something like that, or like it wasn't expressive enough. It felt like it really did feel like I was being betrayed by it. I was
Mhm.
asking it to do these things for me, and I was saying, "You're not representing who we're supposed to be.
Mhm.
You're, yeah, you're not representing who we're supposed to be. You're making me out to be somebody that I'm not. You're doing all these things, and I am begging you to do something differently,
Yes.
but you won't, you can't." Um, so yeah, that's kind of why it felt more like being betrayed. I know obviously my body's not betraying me. It doesn't have a brain. It's not
Right.
making these
Right.
decisions
Right.
consciously. This is literally a hormonal thing essentially, probably a
Right.
bunch of other stuff. I swear I'm a
Probably.
biologist. Um, yeah, but it really felt like being let down by someone or having something go against everything that you wanted it to be,
Mhm.
rather than like being zipped up in a sleeping bag or something and not able to escape. Yeah,
Zipped up in a
I
sleeping bag. Oh my gosh, that's so funny you mentioned that because I cannot believe I my sister and I did this, but I had trust issues growing up, people had to prove to me that I could trust them. And again, I feel so bad that I put my sister through this, but again, like I was being part of it. So I told her, May, she illustrated the cover of Rainbow Girl on How to Beat Extreme Hunger and my cookbook. Um, I told her, May, we have to prove that we can trust each other. I'm like aware of how sick that sounds. Like we have to prove how that we can trust each other. So what we did was we rolled each other up in the carpet. So I would have to lay down in the carpet and she would roll me up all the way in the carpet. And when you're rolled up in a carpet, you are trapped. You cannot unroll, like even as I'm explaining it, I'm, like, getting heart palpitations because that is what it feels like to be trapped. And obviously, like, that was the biggest trust exercise ever because she could run away and leave me in the carpet, and I could do the
Yeah.
same thing to her, but we would unroll each other, and that was, a proof that we could trust each other. Again, so sick, but when I have my, like, existential when my existential claustrophobia is, like, very intense, that's what it feels like. It feels like I am laying there rolled up in that carpet, and I'm almost happy that I can explain it in that way because I think people who don't feel that and who just don't get it, like, can almost kind of imagine how it feels, like, the body is the carpet that I have no control over, and I'm just in there.
Yeah. Yeah, I how old-ish were you 2 when you did this?
I was young, I was, like, 7 or 8.
Oh, that is just child behavior, don't worry about that.
Okay,
Maybe your
like, it's not
motivations for it were,
pathological.
like yeah, maybe the motivations for it were not general child behavior, but that is definitely
Yeah.
just
No, like,
yeah, don't worry about
I
that.
definitely would not have done that if I was, like, a teen because if I was, like, a teenager, like, that would definitely be, like, borderline, like,
Yeah,
pathological.
I would be concerned then.
Oh, thank gosh you're not concerned. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, yeah, I think I was just thinking, like, it sounded a bit weird when I, like, referred to gender dysphoria as possibly, like, being described as being, zipped up in, like, a sleeping bag, and I didn't, like, mean, like, your body feels like it's something different, I just kind of meant, like, rather than it feeling like being trapped in a skin that
Mhm.
isn't yours, you're trapped in a skin that's doing stuff that you're not trapped in your body, it's still your meat suit, it still feels okay for you
Okay.
as a body, it's just doing things that it shouldn't be doing by your
Yes.
standards, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Um, I just kind of wanted to, like, clarify that. Everything that you just said, like, still stands. I just thought
No, no,
somebody
no,
could
I get
come
it,
back at me and be like, "That's a very bizarre thing to say."
no, and it actually, like I don't know if this is, like, a weird connection that I'm now making, but, like, dysautonomia, when your body does all these things that it's literally not supposed to, and they both start with "dis," right? Like, cause yeah, whatever. Like, obviously
No.
completely different experiences, but I can imagine, cause again, I have so many clients, and there's an overlap of neurodivergence and eating disorders and dysautonomia, nervous system dysregulation,
Mhm.
right? And they come to me and they have their body doing all these things that's not supposed to, and what does the eating disorder do? It makes everything just, like, quiet. It numbs them. Like, the people
Yeah.
that have, like, very severe digestive issues, well, if you're barely eating, oh, how convenient, right? And yeah, so again, this is why, as I'd like to see the eating disorders as the adaptations because what all we are doing is we're trying to create safety in a body, in a world, in a system, in the only way in which we know how. And something that I've recently been talking about also in my emails is this idea of existential burnout, and it's gonna seem very off topic, but I promise it's gonna connect. But, like, the existential claustrophobia, I think it for me in many ways, it has yeah, it has contributed to the existential burnout and the burnout just caused by constant thinking, basically, and
Yeah.
thinking deeply. That
Mhm.
is exhausting, and honestly, something that for me has really been helping me to not only make sense of a lot of these concepts, but also to really feel a flicker, not just a flick, more than a flicker of hope and excitement, and that I'm not really existentially lonely is community, is, the
Mhm.
membership that we are in, and speaking to other people that when you say you get it, I'm like, I know you're not fucking around. Like, I know that you get it because I feel that you get it. And that sensation of feeling that there's other people that also have the existential loneliness, but we have it together in a way, that is what that's what motivates me to wake up in the morning and to do the work and to write my books and to have this podcast and to have these conversations is knowing that you are connecting with other beings just like you. There's no way to describe it. So on that note, because I know you mentioned engaging with several communities online and learning about the autism and the LGBTQ community. Can I'd love if you can kind of share like a little bit about the power of community and the impact that some of these people had on you in learning more about yourself and gaining the courage to trust the part of yourself that deep inside you knew this is who I am, but society is set up in a way that it is like, "No, that's not true."
Yeah, absolutely. As you were just talking about that, I was thinking I want to talk about community from an autistic perspective as well, because I really think that although the stereotype says autistic people don't do well in groups, autistic people
Mhm.
um, struggle in social situations, autistic people struggle to make community and connections, I think we desperately need community as well.
Yes.
That community looks very different to what a neurotypical community would look like, but we absolutely need that support from other people who are like us, just knowing that we are similar.
Yeah.
Even if we're not talking about the topic at hand that makes us similar, we still
Are we
need to
ever?
know that there are, yeah, that we still need to know that there are people out there who get it, that we aren't some complete alien. We need to know that there are people who agree with us and stand with our values and
Mhm.
relate to the experiences that we have. And I think it really is something that is so powerful. Maybe, yes, like you do struggle being in social situations all the time, but this is where the power of like online communities really comes in. So the only reason I have a job is because I joined an online community and it spiraled from there because of
Wow.
much these people, how much I resonated with these people. This had
Mhm.
nothing to do with eating disorders or
Mhm.
autism whatsoever. I did one time ask somebody, "Are you autistic?" And they said no, and I was like, "Damn, that's embarrassing." Um,
I was sure of it. Well, maybe
I
they
was
are
so
and they don't know it
adamant.
yet.
I was so adamant. I'm still. Mm, I
Maybe
think
they are, and they just don't
I'm
know it,
less
or they're in
convinced now.
denial. Maybe they're just in denial.
Yeah, yeah, I'm less convinced now that I know them more, but never say never. Anyways, yeah, so really that kind of is the main like power of community, just how refreshing it is to go through your life not having, and you don't even like notice it consciously until you think about it later and you think,
Mhm.
oh my God, yeah, my life has been living has been an easier task
Yeah.
now that I know I'm not the only person who deals with these thoughts, who deals with these experiences on a day-to-day basis. And I'm just gonna like give this a little bit more context. So I work in sustainability. I
Mhm.
originally started working in climate education. I now kind of work in all of it. Um, Sustainable development goals. Um, they are my bitch. So yeah, that's kind of the area that I work in, and the teams that I work with are literally all across the country. So
Mhm.
we very rarely do meet up, and we work online a lot.
Mhm.
And yeah, really just having those people that I can message, and I don't. It doesn't even have to be like a serious conversation. I can send a meme or something,
Uh-huh.
and just knowing that we all kind of are on the same level, or just like even if I'm not participating in the conversation, say that like two of my coworkers are sending like um somebody sent like I don't know a link to an article on
Mhm.
Slack, and then someone else replies to it being like, "Oh, for God's sake!" And I would think the exact same thing. It's
Yep.
just so nice to see and to know that there are other people who have the same thoughts as you, and that we aren't
Yep.
alone. You don't have to be physically with people to know that there are people who are with you.
Yes.
Um, so kind of taking it back towards like eating disorders and autism and the LGBTQ community.
Hmm.
So I won't go into that one. That's too much of a rabbit hole. So yeah, so when I like first started seeing people kind of talking about their autism, and like when I say talking, I mean like posting on Instagram.
Wait,
Um,
wait, wait. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the
about
talking
being,
of today, right? Just posting
yeah,
on being on. Although, and this is again a whole another rabbit hole. I just can't with the amount of AI generated content on Instagram. Like, I just can't because it's so. I think for many people, like they don't even realize, but for us autistic people who are
yeah.
so tuned in to authenticity, I can tell from like the first sentence this is written by an AI, and
I've
it
had to
fucking
block
ticks
so
me
many
off.
things. I've had to
What did you
block
say?
so many like accounts and themes because I just
Yeah.
can't.
Yeah, like,
To be fair, I
I have to,
don't go
like
on Instagram that
as,
much
like
anymore.
I'm
But
like, if you aren't even putting in the time to, like, authentically connect, like, with your audience, like, why should I even follow you? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just it's so frustrating. Like, I know it's, like, time constraints and stuff, but yeah, another conversation.
yeah, I'm just gonna like kind of carry on what I was saying because I just saw
Yes.
something else I thought that I really wanted to bring up at the beginning. So I started seeing a lot of people who were autistic and also LGBTQ, and I started learning about like the higher prevalence rates of
Mhm.
LGBTQ within the LGBTQ community within people who are autistic. I don't think I said that the right way around, but like,
I mean, I think they're again, it's not one in the other, it's they're both
yeah,
coalescing. That's
yeah,
that's what it is.
higher percentage of autistic people are LGBTQ than neurotypical people are
Yes.
LGBTQ. I think that's the way I'm putting
Well,
it.
I mean, I get what
Yeah,
you're saying, yeah.
yeah. So I started seeing that and I was thinking, I was kind of realizing I fit into both of these boxes.
Mhm.
I did air quotes because this is a podcast. Um,
Both of these communities, niches, yeah, yeah, no,
yeah,
I get it, yeah.
yeah,
Well, Nico, the amount of times that especially when I'm recording audiobooks, I have to say quote unquote, like I have to say it, right? Because people can't
yeah.
see the quotes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was seeing this so much, and then I was also seeing people struggling, not necessarily with eating disorders, but also these people who matched me in terms of they were autistic and also
Mhm.
LGBTQ, also struggled with similar similar. I'm just gonna like use the pathological terminology because I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah, I mean,
think of like
sometimes we
what.
have to, yeah.
Yeah, had disorders which were similar in that they tackled the same root issue in a
Mhm.
person or that what someone was struggling with, they would also have these conditions. And then I, so I said I grew up very much in country bumpkin land.
Uh-huh. Country
Not
bumpkin.
US country bumpkin land. It's very different in
No,
the
I know, but,
UK.
like,
But like
that word bumpkin just cracks me up.
I hate it so much, but
Yeah,
like
I mean, it
people
makes
know
me
what it
cringe,
means.
but, like, it reminds me of pumpkin, obviously, but you know that,
Yeah.
like, fairy godmother in Cinderella? That's who I think of when I hear the word bumpkin. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like we're just like we're really quite rural, far
Mhm,
from we're far from other people.
mhm.
We don't have like all of it's not it's not like I know what I want to say.
But the
It's
words,
not
yeah.
like dangerous. It's not like dangerous being different or being LGBTQ. It's just it's not very much not the normal people are not used to it like at all.
Mhm.
They're not necessarily gonna like it's not like Bible thumper land or anything, but
Right.
it's just it's people don't talk about that stuff
Yeah.
really. And like I
Right.
said, I'm going to go on a little bit of I'm going to go on a tangent again. So I mentioned that um, I haven't done it in this podcast actually. So my granddad, I'm 100% convinced that he's autistic. However, he grew up in a time where like rural and you didn't have to go into a city ever in your life. You could just
Mhm.
live in a rural place your entire time.
Mhm.
He dropped out of school when he was, I'm going to say 15. Didn't drop out of school. he got a job and worked on his father's farm. And he had only really he did other things in school, but the only thing he
Mhm.
really enjoyed was horticulture. Now, we don't have horticulture, which is
Mhm.
basically like gardening and like vegetable gardening. We don't have that as a subject anymore. We haven't had that for decades.
Right.
But that was the only subject that he really enjoyed. He then spent his entire life working on a farm, not like alone. He worked on a farm with his brother and they had employees, but it's a job that you do a lot of the time on your own. You're not always working next to somebody. And if you're
Right.
working with somebody, they're at the other end of the yard and you are kind of shouting coordinated instructions to each
Right.
other and you have to know each other inside out, kind of
Uh-huh.
to, for this to be able to work because you're working with animals or you're working with huge machines.
Right.
Um, so he has lived a life where he was probably autistic, but it didn't matter at all. The life that he lived really suited being autistic because he didn't have to
Yeah.
interact with people all the time. He didn't have to come around like city spaces. He didn't have to do small talk. He lived at home. He would see
Mhm.
his wife, who was my grandma. He would see his kids and he would see like his brother and the people who worked with him. And he didn't have to see other people. He didn't
Right.
have to make these other connections. And like, and he could go out, he could go to other places like
Mhm.
with his family. He could still go and see other places if he wanted to. He didn't a lot because like it
You
didn't,
want
he
to.
didn't think
Yeah.
about a whole lot. He has been a lot of places, but like, yeah, so like that's kind of just to describe like the history of like rural places. I'm going to say particularly in the UK. I imagine it's similar in other places, but I can't say for certain. So
Mm.
that's what like a lot of the people who live here have grown up with.
Mhm.
Some people are a bit bizarre and they're not quite like all the neurotypical people, but they still work. They still work in the
Right.
community. Sorry, I've completely gone off of where I was.
No,
Anyways,
no, I mean, again, this is, like, the amount of times that I have, like, not posted podcast episodes because I would be speaking and I would listen back and be like, "This is so irrelevant to anything." So it's like an audio journal is what I just call them at this point. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Feel free to cut out as much or as little as you would like,
Yeah.
because this is so random. But I'll get genuinely back on topic. So I've always lived in a community that is like relatively safe for
Mhm,
autistic people and LGBTQ people.
mhm,
It's just not really brought up or talked about.
mhm,
Um, and it's rare that you get a diagnosis really. So I didn't get a diagnosis until I was 18 and I lived somewhere completely different.
mhm,
So when I went to the doctors, essentially to when I went to my GP to start asking about like hormone treatment because I
mhm.
wanted hormone treatment, um, they were thrown for a loop. They were like, "Oh God, what do we do now?" Basically, and like they didn't like present like that. But now looking back, I can just see you had absolutely no idea what you were doing whatsoever,
Yeah.
and I was put through so many different loops, and it was so difficult to get on this. And then I went, and I had such a hassle even when I did get on it, and it was so difficult to get my prescriptions, even though I did have a written prescription. It was so difficult to get them to me. And then I went to Liverpool for university, which I'm
Mhm.
going back to in July, and I cannot wait.
Oh, that's, like,
Um,
already so soon.
I
Yeah.
know I am buzzed. So I went to Liverpool, which is very much a city, and it is a very diverse city. And
Mhm.
the GP, the general practitioner's practice that they have there, um, they have at least one they have at least one GP who specializes in trans healthcare.
Yep.
That was insane for me.
Yes.
It just blew my mind. And he was like, "Yep, I know what you're going through. I can see what has what has gone on with you, and you are stereotypical. Not like stereotypical, but you
Yeah, no,
are
no, but
a
I get
case
what
that
you're
we would
saying. Yeah.
definitely give hormone treatment to
Yes.
because it's not dangerous for you.
Yeah.
You know what you want. You've known this for years. Um, yeah, and we can see that in you. And so it was so easy for me to get that treatment. And one of the things that he said to me that really stuck with me was it is seen not just in their practice, but in other practices who actually pick up on autism and LGBTQ.
Mhm.
It's so common for trans masc people to develop eating disorders as a
Mm.
way to cope with the way that their body changes. And
Yes.
hearing somebody say that in real life and hearing someone, especially somebody who could help me,
Yes.
and hearing someone say that after I had seen it so much from people online who were just having the experiences, but we couldn't do anything about it,
Mhm.
was just so validating. And that was literally like 2 years ago now.
Yes.
And like it still sticks with me. I'm just like, thank you. You
Yep.
are the person that people like me needed.
Yep.
Um yes, I think that's kind of, so going back to the community thing,
Mhm.
um, autistic people don't always need a super tight or loads of interactions with an in-person community.
Mhm.
We do need a community, and that's where online comes in, but also having those in-person interactions every so often,
Oh, yeah.
they are so important still,
Oh, that
to be
definitely.
able
Yep.
to actually talk to somebody or to be able to actually have like a conversation with not
Yep.
even a conversation, but just hear someone
Just to, like, be
say
with them.
something and
Yeah.
yeah, to be with them, and not have them be 7,000 miles away in a different country, to have them be
Yeah.
like either sat next to you or to have them over the phone and they will actually like they can actually make a physical difference to your life
Yep.
rather than just like saying I agree with you kind of thing.
Yep.
Yes, I do have like strong feelings on the need for community. I did kind of shy away from it for a long time because I was
Mhm.
like, no, we're autistic, we struggle with community.
That's what
But
I
it's not
had.
that we struggle
Yep.
with community, we struggle with the way that community is
Set up.
portrayed and put upon us by
Yes,
neurotypical society.
I love that you brought this up because that was one of my own limiting beliefs for years. Because at one point with one-on-one work, I love it, but you reach a capacity, right? You can't talk to 100 people at the same time. So every like a
Mhm,
lot of people were saying to me, a lot of my online communities that I was already in, this I know, like, the irony, the contradiction, but they were saying, like, "Why don't you do group coaching? Why don't you start a community?" And my pushback was always, "No, but that's not gonna work because I work with autistic people, and autistic people don't like communities."
mhm.
While I was in autistic communities. Like so so anyways, again, that's why, I'm so grateful, that we have the Autistically ED free membership and the academy and all these things, and I really wanna, uh, not hone in on it more, but, like, really, create more around it and really focus on that more because I think especially now with the existential claustrophobia and burnout and all the things that, compound and weave into each other, like, I cannot be having as many one-on-one clients as I used to be because
Mhm.
I didn't used to be writing books and, having communities and this kind of stuff, and podcasts and all the things. But yeah, I mean to your point, community, other people that just get you, there's no way to describe it. And that's why you have to be part of a community, because you experience the indescribable and that like loneliness piece too. This sounds weird, but, like, when I feel so lonely, like, the only thing that gets me through is knowing that there are other people that also feel this right now, and that makes me feel not as lonely. And when you
Mhm.
can engage and speak with those people in that, like, divine dimension, as I like to call it, again, I'm literally speechless because there's no words. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, so to bring this full circle, everyone come join us in the Autistically 83 membership. Shameless plug. Which Nico is a part of, by the way. And Nico, everyone loves you so much. I hope you know that. I hope you feel
Come
that.
join us.
Um,
Yeah, come join us. We genuinely like
we
we have
love
the
you.
random conversations, but it
Yeah.
is so affirming
Yes. That's
of
the word.
who we are. Yeah.
Affirming. Yeah. So is there anything else? Nico, that well, I'm sure there are many other else's that you didn't share and that I didn't share that we could talk for infinity about. But is there anything specifically that, for anyone listening to this who resonates with your experience, resonates with my experience to a certain extent, something you'd like them to take away or give them before we hit stop recording?
I don't know if I didn't have anything coming into this, and I don't know if it's really like a takeaway, but I think it's kind of just a little bit of a reminder, or maybe it is a bit of a reminder, or just something to know if you haven't heard it before.
Hmm.
But finding out who you are in any sense of that, in any sense of that description, is really difficult. It is not an easy process to go through. It's hard
Hmm.
mentally,
Hmm.
like it's 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 taxing to think about these
Yes.
things all the time, but it's also really, really difficult to figure out the answers. It is not something that you are ever gonna come to overnight, or that you are it's not something that you are gonna figure out in a week. You will
Hmm.
question it, and you will wonder whether you do fit in with these multiple different
Hmm.
identities, whether this is talking about your sexuality, your gender, whether you are autistic or neurodivergent at all. It will take you a heck of a long time to figure out what the answer is, and you will go through so many different iterations of what the answer can be.
Hmm.
So please, if you are in that experience, in that process, you aren't doing anything wrong.
Hmm.
It just is hard,
Yep.
but you will, and it sounds cliche, but you will get to that answer in the end. You will
Yep.
get to that answer in the end, but that doesn't mean that it's any more of an easy process to go through.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, please just like know that it is incredibly difficult for the vast majority of people, because you're trying to figure something out that no one has ever figured out before, because no one has been you before,
Right.
and there's no guidance. Well, maybe there's guidance, but
There's
there's
no
no
map,
real
the
there's
map is
no
a
map
trap.
on
Yep.
map on where you're going to end up, or which questions to ask,
Mhm.
depending on what you think. So it literally is, you are, this is like the funniest phrase that I've probably ever said in my life, but like I think it's hilarious. You genuinely are flying by the seat of your pants. And
Yes.
if you don't know that phrase, it just means that you're winging it. But I think it's the most hilarious way to say that.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, we're all winging it all the time.
yeah.
This whole podcast is winging it.
Oh my God. If you
Yeah.
are listening to this podcast and I don't know, Olivia posts it and it's like 30 minutes, 45 minutes, probably like half of what we rambled about has been cut out
Yes,
for good
yeah.
reason.
That's hilarious. Yeah, because we're always winging it. I told Nico when we got on, I have no plan. We are just gonna fly by the seat of our pants. I didn't say that, but yeah, yeah, and it's funny how that can be interpreted because in where you are, would that be interpreted as flying by the seat of your underwear?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
because here, like how I heard it was flying by the seat of like your trousers,
Yeah.
and now we're having that conversation again that we might have to cut out, or maybe I'll purposely leave it in. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, thank you, Nico, always for your words of wisdom. There's a weird fly, and just your insight and your love and your abundance and your energy and your soul and every not thing, but every that makes you you. Because it's so again, no words, and I'm not even gonna attempt to find the words because 'cause they're not there, but I'm so grateful for
I feel
knowing
the thought
yes,
wave.
we feel
There
it, and
aren't
the
words, but
yes,
yes.
I'm so grateful for you and for our connection, and here's to infinite more years of connection, because this is,
Yeah.
one of those friendships that's like, I know this is never gonna crumble, because so many people, are like, "Yeah, I lost touch with them," like, I know that's never gonna happen with us because
Yeah.
of what it is. Um,
Like, when I find a friendship like this, and I have done this exactly once, maybe like 1.5 times before,
1.5.
I don't lose contact with that person until I don't know whether they are alive or not.
Yes. No, that yes, exactly.
And I have spent the last, like, 5 years trying to find out whether this person is alive.
Oh, for the half person?
No,
Maybe
this
they're
is not
half
that.
alive. No, I'm just kidding. Now
But
now
yeah,
we're going off on very strange tangents.
yeah,
Thank
we
you,
can just cut
Nico.
all of this bit out.
Yes. Thank you, Nico, for coming on the podcast.
Thank you
And,
so much. This has been, like, I was so nervous in, like, the half an hour up to it, well, like, the whole day.
so I hope you enjoyed this episode today with Nico. Aren't they just such a delight of a human? Nico and I would both love to continue the conversation with you inside the Existential Autistic membership. So if you're looking for a community of other autistic aliens who truly get you, come join us at livelabelfree.com/membership. I hope to see you there, and otherwise, I will talk to you in the next episode. Bye bye for now. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, my friend. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much to me if you could leave a positive rating and review for the Live Label Free podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It's a free way to show your support so I can continue bringing you the valuable content that I love to create for you.